Okay, we have a quorum. I call the January 2021 meeting of the Oxford Planning Commission to order. Commissioners, you have your agenda in front of you. Are there any changes, revisions, additions, deletions which need to be made from the agenda? Hearing none, I'll entertain a motion just for our purposes. Anyone here with the who's attending virtually, I will allow. I'm going to rely on my two in present for motions and seconds, unless there is none, and then we'll go to. If there is no motion, if there's no second, we will then turn to our virtual commissioners. With that, do I have a motion to approve the agenda?
So moved.
I have a motion to approve. Is there a second?
Second.
I have a second. Commissioner Freeman, how do you vote?
Yes.
Commissioner King, how do you vote on the agenda?
Yes.
Commissioner Riddell?
Yes.
Commissioner Rigby?
Yes.
I guess Commissioner Gray?
Yes.
And I vote yes as well. Ben, will you just let me know when if he joins? Okay. The agenda is approved. Okay. Now we have the minutes from the December 14th, 2020 meeting. Are there any changes which need to be made from the Commissioner's review of the minutes from December? Hearing none, I'll entertain a motion to approve the minutes from the December 2020 meeting.
So moved.
I have a motion to approve. Is there a second?
Second.
All right. Commissioner Freeman, how do you vote?
Yes.
Commissioner Riddell?
Yes.
Commissioner King?
Yes.
Commissioner Murphy?
Yes.
All right, vote from in person. The minutes are approved. No staff report.
Mr. Mr. Chairman, can I ask one quick question about the staff report?
Certainly.
Ben, or maybe someone else. Those are the final numbers I was most interested in. Those construction costs, 2019, $240 million, $90 million this year for the city. What do we sort of deduce from that, from a planning and development,
Well, I would suspect that a large portion of that would be the tail end of, I think, some larger development projects that have come to an end where this year we haven't seen any of those very large projects come through. So the permit fee evaluation of those fees would have been included in that.
how much is COVID related, do you think?
I don't necessarily think so because
Okay.
I've got a trend list which actually, like before we had the big purpose-built student housing complexes,
Yeah.
that was pretty much in line. We were about 85 million, 87 million, I think 90 million, and then we had some really big spikes with the hospital and then purpose-built.
Yeah.
And I think you've seen that cycle come.
So we've kind of plateaued with our large,
back to a stable, like this is our ordinary.
our norm 5 years ago, kind of where we're, okay.
Hey, Ben, is your microphone on or being told?
Can't hear you. I'll make sure it's turned on.
Okay, so not even really COVID related, just kind of the tail end of some of our large projects, and okay. Well, that's
Correct.
good. That's good.
All right. We have an administrative approval of case number 2705A regarding the Funkies edition. Consent agenda. It's case number 2706. It's Oxford Healthcare Properties. It's a request for a special exception as to facade for the Oxford Orthopedic Sports Medical Office Building located at Belt Boulevard at Nicole Lane. Any commissioner see any need or reason to remove this from consent agenda? Anyone who may be joining us virtually who is not a member of the commission wish to voice an objection to pull this from the consent agenda? All right. We do have a limited amount of audience. I know they're here for other cases, but I will ask if they see I have an objection to see it removed from consent agenda. I have a head shake no, and for that I will entertain a motion on the consent agenda.
Motion to approve the consent agenda.
I have a motion to approve. Is there a second?
Second.
All right. Commissioner Freeman, how do you vote?
Yes.
Commissioner Riddell?
Yes.
Commissioner King? Commissioner King, how do you vote?
Yeah, sorry, I had muted myself.
All right. Commissioner Murphy?
Yes.
All right, all in favor here? Consent agenda is approved. This brings us to our first case for public hearing, and it's case number 2694. It's RAN management. It's a request for a special exception as provided in 3.8.10.2 as to the use of a service station in a TNB district. Yes, Robert.
All right, the subject property is located on a corner lot of about 1.3 acres in Lot 1 of the Colonnade Crossing subdivision, Phase 1. It is on the north side of Highway 30 at the intersection of Barrington Drive. The applicant is proposing to construct a service station with 5 pumps and associated convenience store with a bay of retail space and a second story of storage area. The site plan for this property is the subject of the next case, and this request is for a special exception for the use of a service station in a TNB district. The general standards for approval of a special exception are found in section 9.3. The guiding principle is to determine if the requested special exception is or is not in harmony with the purpose and intent of the ordinance. The Planning Commission must make a finding granting the special exception will not adversely affect the public interest. The applicant states that the structure will be aesthetically pleasing and would be an improvement over the dilapidated house on the current site, which has since been demolished. They also reference the existence of several service stations along this section of Molly Bar Highway 30, one of which is in a TNB district as precedent. As to the location for a service station, staff is generally not opposed. This use would be at the intersection of 2 highways, generally an appropriate place for a service station. This lot is the first to be developed in the Colonnade Crossing subdivision and will be a highly visible development at one of the main entrances to the city. As such, it is imperative that a high-quality standard is established. Since the time of writing this report, this has changed a little bit, and we've gotten an additional set of architecturals from the applicant, but the ones that were attached show, the new ones show solid east, south, and west fronts. The north front, north facade is essentially just solid brick veneer. Those elevations are that elevation will be visible from a public road. And we would like to see additional architectural elements with that, and we have a condition to that point. As to everything else for a gas station, the LDC requires one of the additional standards, I think letter C, states that pump areas on corner lots in the TNB must be located to the side or rear of the retail facility and not in the front yard unless the lot backs into a residential use area. This lot does back into a residential use, therefore the pumps are located in the front yard of this. Other standards set forth in the LDC include stacking requirements on the location of pumps, and standards for pump canopies, and the plans comply with all of these standards. The staff has received several comments from the public in regards to this development, and those have been attached, and we've been receiving those throughout the week as well. So our recommendation is that staff is of the position that this location is appropriate for a service station and that the design proposed generally meets the standards required by the LDC, with the exception of some architectural elements for the with a now north facade. If the planning commission makes a finding that granting the special exception will not adversely affect the public interest, staff recommends approval of the special exception with the following condition, that updated architectural elevations will be provided that include appropriate architectural elements for the north facade.
Thank you. I couldn't tell who was sponsoring this application. Is there a representative online? Okay. All right, we have the applicant's representative here. Any questions? Let's just start virtual. Any questions from the commissioners virtually?
I have one.
Hold on 1 second. Let him, we're gonna get him situated. Thank you, Bill. Just want to make sure before we get him. Okay, he is present.
My question is, what's the reason for the exception? I understand that these are allowed by special exception, but what makes this exceptional?
Did you understand the question?
Is this a question for the applicant or about the code?
Yeah, I don't know, Bill, your question may be about the code more than anything. I'm not sure if that's a question that the representative could answer. I mean, I think, and I'm not trying to step in and answer and step on your shoes at all, but I think there is nothing exceptional other than they believe that this use, while not allowed in the code, is allowed by special exception, and they believe that they can serve a purpose, and it's basically a good place for what they have planned. I think that's, correct me if I'm wrong.
That is correct.
Mr. Chairman.
There is nothing, again, I'm not minimizing the use. There's nothing exceptional about the use. It's just, hey, we believe it's a good place to put a service station, and we're going to ask that we can allow one to be placed here.
And for the record, I'm John Granberry with Granberry and Associates.
To address the questions from the other direction, because I posed a similar question to Ben today, which is, why is a service station a special exception? And the situation is it's traditional neighborhood business, and the thought in going into the code was that we'd like a little more discretion over where service stations are placed because it is a mixed-use environment. Does that answer your question, Bill?
That helps, thanks.
Okay.
Any additional questions from virtually, commissioners? Commissioner King?
Yeah, thanks, Brian. I'm just looking through the standards here, and it says, when we look at T&D, that the pumps must be situated in the rear. Am I reading that right, Ben? I just want to make sure that I'm fully aware.
Yes.
Of the standards. In T&D, pump areas need to be located in the side or the rear, but in this instance, the specific exception is that it be located in the front.
Yes, it's located in the front because directly to the west of the property, there is currently a residence, and we're trying to keep the pumps away from the residence.
Okay, so what's the inherent cost? So what's the rationale behind keeping them away from the front to begin with? Is it just an aesthetic issue? Is it a safety issue? What's the logic inherent in having them in the front?
Marvin, this is Ben. Yes,
In part, it was an aesthetic issue. It was also trying to, in the TMB district, trying to bring the buildings closer to the street. And when you have the pumps in the front, then it's kind of counterintuitive to that, except when you're in that instance of, when you have the context of the adjacent property being used as a residence, and so you're trying to protect the residence that's right there by shielding from, cars pulling in and out of a service station, the noise that goes along with that, and so the building can act as a buffer to the residents in those instances.
Okay. So is there also a safety issue with the pump proposal, especially I'm thinking of where the speed limit is, and I don't know if that's anything that gets into consideration here, from the engineering perspective, but I'm just thinking when you're at the intersection of two highways, cars might be traveling a little faster and then the pumps are right at the front. I don't know if that's an issue at all, as people are entering and exiting. If that sort of safety concern is a part of that project as well, or is that just something else?
So our access point is onto Barrington Drive directly. We don't have any direct access to the highway. So the speed limit from entering cars would be 25 to 30 miles an hour off of Barrington.
Okay.
We also increased at the request of the planning department, increased the amount of landscaping screening along that western property line to provide a little more, closure for those adjacent landowners so that they wouldn't be affected as much by anything going on our site.
All right, thank you. That's all my questions for now.
Any additional questions? Virtual.
Yes, Joseph here.
All right, Joseph.
Are these going to be only gas pumps, or are they going to be diesel pumps?
Yeah, gas only.
Okay. That's all I got?
Yeah, there may be a diesel pump on the gas. They won't be separated for large trucks as far as 18-wheelers. So the only 18-wheeler traffic, I think that's what you're referring to, is actual separate diesel pump, but we won't have that.
Yeah, there seemed like there was some public concern about 18-wheelers, and I tended to agree with that concern, so that's what I wanted to know. So if that's not going to be there, then that's all I've got. Thank you.
Yeah, those are usually separate bays and everything else because of the height and whatnot. All right. Thank you, Joseph. Any additional questions virtually? How about here? All right, Judy, go ahead.
Well, I don't know if you're asking if I have a question for representative or if we're asking Rihanna questions at a separate time.
You can ask any question you wish.
Okay, I just would like, for my sake and maybe people listening, for Rihanna to explain a little bit of the traffic study. Because I think that is a legitimate concern for people in the area, and I thought that was interesting, and we didn't get it until this afternoon. So.
Absolutely, and I don't know if the traffic engineer is on the line or at the meeting to speak to it as well, as far as the details of it. This afternoon, I sent an update to my report to Ben for distribution to the planning commissioners, which stated that we had received the traffic report and a conceptual layout for a roundabout at the intersection. We discussed that in my report, I stated that the traffic study provided states that there are no recommendations for improvement as a result of the gas station itself. Long term, as the entire Colonnade Crossing development builds out, there are some recommendations for roundabouts and improvements related to the traffic for the entire development, but right now there are not any. The traffic study stated that there is a slight decrease in the level of service, and I believe it's in the AM condition, I think, at the intersection of Park and Highway 30 and Barrington. However, it was taking, as far as Park traffic is concerned, it took the level of service, I believe, from a level of service B to a level of service C, and the level of service C is still considered in mild traffic. It would not be anything that would be concerning. I believe it increased the delay. If you're on Park Drive, it added about 4 seconds worth of delay to that traffic. There was a greater delay on Barrington for people making a left, I believe, out of the development, and that was a greater decrease in level of service as well. But again, it's not anything that gives me any reason to have any concerns about a severe negative impact from traffic from this gas station itself.
Does that satisfy you, Judy? Any question, any additional? All right, JR?
Yeah, John, could you just, we've already seen a case, I guess, mid-year for this property. Could you just give us the larger context of Colonnade Crossing? Because I think a lot of the concerns are about traffic, and the concerns from the public are about traffic associated with the service station, but this is part of a much larger development. Could you just talk us through that?
Right, and I understand, and as far as the, what we are here for today, and I'll go into all that just to be clear that it is for the gas station.
That's right.
But as far as the overall Colonnade Crossing development, the traffic impact study addressed that as well. It addressed two things we wanted to take into consideration: the overall development of Colonnade, because we knew that that would generate and warrant some improvements to intersections out there, not only the intersection at Park Barrington, but also the intersection to the west, which will be in the future sometime. What the traffic study yielded, and Rihanna alluded to it, was the improvements that needed to be made would be, you could use a roundabout or a signalized intersection. The roundabout does provide a higher level of service in the future, and I've designed a roundabout, laid it out preliminarily just to make sure that it all works, so that we wouldn't have to come back and move the property lines or anything as it relates to the C-store. I've got that design with me that I can hand out to you guys if y'all want to see it. It was kind of a last-minute deal, so I apologize for not actually having it.
That's fine, I guess.
I would like to see it.
Yeah. I mean, part of my point, I guess, is if we're going to consider whether to put a service station here, traffic per se can't be the deciding issue, because there's, 88 acres of development that's going on here? What's that? Yeah.
So that is the exact issue. We don't know exactly what is going to be constructed or developed out there currently.
But it's TNB in the front, and then it's straight commercial in the back, correct?
Straight higher density commercial in the back, correct,
Yeah.
SCO. So
and the access points will be from Molly Bar. Will there be an access point to the northwest? Or?
There will be onto County Road, 182.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's there will be only 3 access points into the development. When we looked at the traffic impact study and the effects of traffic, the additional traffic generated, we went on the high end of all of the counts in generating something extremely dense, knowing that it probably wouldn't be that dense, but at the same time, you have to be conservative with that. So the level of service that this double lane roundabout that I've got laid out provided does increase to a level of service A for the overall development, meaning it's improving your intersection by essentially 3 level services as it sits today. So, and showing that it would work, right now, I do have the developer for Colonnade Crossing is here with us tonight, and I don't know that he wants to speak to it, but we are in the process of working with the city on developing a plan to going ahead and moving forward with the roundabout construction sooner rather than later. I believe we anticipate that the roundabout would potentially be done at the same time that the C-store would be finished or thereabouts.
Okay, yeah. Is Will gonna?
Yeah, Will might
Yeah.
speak to that.
Is that,
Because that's a pretty critical piece, what you just said right there. Because we've caught, previously, we found ourselves, well, who triggered the roundabout? Who did this? Who did, and getting out on the front end about that roundabout is gonna be important, so we'll, yeah.
Well, so the only thing I'll say is we know that it does not warrant the roundabout now or any
Yes.
improvements, but
Yeah.
in the future.
For the record, I'm Will Matthews, the developer. Like John said, we've had some preliminary conversations with Rihanna city staff, and he's even spoken to MDOT about some permitting things of that nature. Obviously, we see that there's a long-term concern, and we're fully committed to addressing it. It's not something that I could guarantee that we could get on while the C-store was being built. I think just because of the nature of the scale, it's going to take a little bit longer. This is not something that we anticipated. We anticipated improvements to all the intersections. Roundabouts were not something that we kind of foresaw, but it looks to be the best mechanism to control the traffic and the flow. And so, we're committed to that, but it's going to be a process, and that doesn't mean years. I mean, we're working on it actively, but I do know the applicant, Rand Management, they would like to begin construction as soon as possible. I don't think I could meet their timeline, so to speak, but we are working towards that process. There's obviously a lot of people involved and entities that have to permit it, approve it, and it's not just this intersection either. It's the one to the west that we would like, if we're gonna do it, would like to do it all at once, so.
You talking about Highway 7?
No, this would be
The one
to
to
the
the
west at
yeah.
the main boulevard.
Yeah.
Ferndale Drive, so.
Sure, yeah.
Yeah.
I got you.
anything else?
I'm sure there's some red tape involved.
Yeah,
Would
you keep going.
Fall to the state. All right, thanks, Will.
Yes, sir.
Any additional questions? Is there anyone, now, we have, and I'm sure everybody has received in your packets, numerous objections to this, and my question is, John, on lighting, give me a look. Is there some mechanism of how we're directing the light and whatnot?
So the lighting concerns, of course, I've received all the.
You've seen them all, I'm sure.
And I addressed them all and was prepared to address them in this instance. We prepared a lighting plan, a photometric plan. According to the Land Development Code, we cannot allow any lighting to escape. We can't increase, the candles outside of our site boundary. We had an electrical engineer develop a lighting photometric plan that shows that, they will not be increased anywhere outside the site boundary. So, and then as far as the under the canopy lights, they're all shielded. They have to be according to the Land Development Code. So y'all are protected from that, and we submitted all that showing that would not be an increase.
Yeah, all lights have to be
Yeah, all,
shielded down.
right.
So
Sure.
not just the canopy lights, but
Right.
all lights.
Is there anybody online who wishes to speak or has any questions? Is there anyone outside of this building? Sometimes in the court, they'll say, we'll call you 3 times, and if you don't answer in 3 times, that's it.
There were some other concerns in the comments. I'd like to maybe address them a little bit. There were concerns regarding the lighting, as you said, speeding concerns along Park. First, let me preface by saying the increase in traffic volume, as Rihanna mentioned earlier, we're only looking at 4 to 5 seconds, and this is on Park, per vehicle in the morning, increasing 6 to 7 seconds per vehicle in the afternoon. You're looking at a total, this is peak hour now, peak hour, not all day long, only in peak hour. Peak hour, you're looking at an increase of 8 vehicles on park in the morning, and in the afternoon, you're looking at 6 vehicle increase. So that's all you're looking at as far as an increase in traffic volumes. One thing you have to bear in mind is that with traffic studies and when you're generating traffic for a service station, most of the trips that are generated come from vehicles that are already traveling on adjacent roadways and they're already in your system. So you won't see the huge effect of additional vehicles when it comes to minor roadways adjacent to the development. So that's where those numbers came from. As far as the speeding concerns, that's more of an enforcement issue. I mean, we're of the opinion that, if you've got 1 vehicle or 50 vehicles a day going down a street, if the traffic speed limit's not being enforced by the police department, then that's not our place to enforce that. So that's the speeding that there was a concern about. Increase in trash and littering. Again, we feel like that's an enforcement concern. So that was pretty much all of the concerns as it relates to traffic volume. There were several concerns about the benefit to the citizens of Oxford with another service station in and along this area. Just according to the parameters that our clients and the metrics that they use, this does grade out as a great site for another service station. So as far as the general public's concerns, I understand what they're saying as far as proximity to other service stations, but as far as my clients are concerned, they do feel like this is a great site for a service station. So,
John, minor question. When you were given the traffic statistics earlier, the 6 to 8 vehicles, is that a rate? Is that 6 to 8 per hour, or is that?
It's per hour, but that's peak hour, which is what everything's designed off of. So as you back into early morning hours or midday hours, it won't be near about as much generation, but we design off the peak hour.
Thanks.
So that's your worst possible case scenario.
Mm-hmm.
But if, and that's just based on the build of the gas station.
Correct.
If the school district were to add classes back over there, or as y'all's development builds out, that would increase a little bit, right?
I believe our original, as the development build out, 100%.
Yeah,
yes.
yeah.
As far as the school district goes, I believe those numbers do include the school, the school being as it was running a year ago or whenever that was the running, not just 2 or 3 trips, as it sits today.
So those numbers were taken when it was still Oxford Elementary?
They blended the numbers using the higher of those because we had a big issue with this because we knew that it was during COVID and we knew that, we may experience some decrease in traffic volumes. There is a way to go and get historical traffic counts.
Yeah.
And that's what we use. And this is from, I did not know this, but it's basically taken from cell phone data. You can gather it from cell phone.
I saw that in a report.
Yeah.
I was like, what?
And so they know where you are.
I always knew it, but now it's confirmed.
Right.
Okay, so.
And so that's how we came to the numbers to try to show as much actual traffic counts existing and forecasted as we could.
Okay.
It's as accurate as it can be, given the times, and it was probably it seemed to me from what I read, it was taken at a time when I think Oxford Elementary was actually in session.
Yeah. Okay. You got any more questions?
I just have a question about the residential that's sort of surrounded by the development. Is there any plan associated with that, or is it just sort of there until they decide to leave? What's the story with that?
A lot immediately adjacent to the west. That's
No idea.
it's not owned by our group.
All right.
No, it's people in there.
Judy?
One second, Judy. You were saying,
I was just going to say, it is zoned traditional neighborhood business, but it's an occupied residential use.
Okay. So eventually, it will be developed, but there are residences that are occupied there for now?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay, Judy.
I just had, I guess, a question, just sort of a comment, and then you can correct me, or you can correct me if I'm wrong, but the people listening, to address what John was saying about people's concerns about there are already 2 gas stations close by, to say that that is not the function of the planning commission to decide how many gas stations can be in a certain area, really, like saying, well, you already have a McDonald's and a Burger King on West Jackson, so you can't have a Chick-fil-A. That's sort of more free market, and maybe there is a mechanism that the city has, but my understanding is that we don't help that. I just kind of wanted to put that out there for people that are concerned about it.
Yeah, Judy, that's a correct statement. I mean, we look at the context of the situation when somebody requests a proposal for a specific use, but we do not require any market studies, market analyses to determine whether or not, how many restaurants we need to have, right here, and how many gas stations need to be at that particular location. If it's zoned appropriate and it meets all the requirements of the code, whether through by right or permitted by right, by special use or special exception, then we make a recommendation based off of that.
I have a question. It's John, it's not for you guys, it's more for Ben, and it may be that this is just a broad statement, but the purpose in harmony, and of course we all know the special exception is when not in, it should be denied when not in harmony of purpose and intent of the Oxford Land Development Code. And there's no real preface to the code to say what its harmony and intent is. Obviously, I know what its intent is, to guide the development of the city of Oxford. I'm curious as to what the planning department sort of view on that is from the standpoint, I'm not trying to put you on the spot, but when you look at something in a special exception, and as you say, you may rely on us to define it per each commissioner, and that's fine, as to the harmony and intent of the code. But when you receive a special exception request, do you go into it looking as if, okay, and I know it's not as to use. We don't, like Judy said, we can't, if somebody wants to put a service station, we don't do the market analysis and say, well, there's too many. We can't do that. But as far as whether this use is sort of in harmony, do you look at Colonnade Crossing and what is expected to be there? Or do you just say, this is a good spot, it's adequate for what is proposed? And again, I know my question is as open-ended and vague as possible, and it's sort of meant to be that way, but if the planning department goes in, and it might be up to us, because we are put here to actually make decisions as to the land development code. Does the planning department rely on us, or do you go in, because as you said in the case notes, you of course said, look, this is an appropriate use, and if the commission thinks that a special exception is granted, then we're okay with that. Is that how you do it? I mean, is that what you look for us?
I think we look at a variety of those elements, Brian. I think we look at the context of the plan for the style of development that's proposed, whether that's through zoning. I think you have to look at the transportation network that's in place, and whether or not it's able to sustain you know, that type of development, I think I think we certainly look at the aesthetics and what we're trying to accomplish. I think the density, you know, especially in a neighborhood business district, we're trying to see, you know, mixing of uses. And, you know, so I think we take a variety of those things into consideration. I think we also, I think, hear you through previous cases and previous commission meetings. We hear you, and that helps also helps us kind of frame that philosophical or the ideology of what we should see development in those areas, you know, be. So I think we look at a variety of those factors when we're evaluating the development or the request for special exceptions.
Okay, I mean, that's fair enough. That's fair enough.
Let me ask a follow-up question what you said, because I understand exactly what you're saying. You know, this is, you talked about the aesthetics, Ben, and what we're trying to accomplish, and we've talked about this is going to be one of our main corridors into the city. You know, going in, you know, coming in on there and then turning down Lamar, and we have the Lamar development, we have the new things over there. So talking about the aesthetics, what we're trying to accomplish with that, and this is really back to one of the initial comments in the report, are the aesthetics where they need to be on this particular structure to make sure that it is making a good first impression, you know, as people are coming into our community. You know, I had a conversation about gas stations in my neighborhood a year ago. I'm very well versed in all of the concerns that the neighbors have, and one of the things that we talked about a lot was that particular gas station needed to look good. It needed to always be looking good and did not need to, you know, in 2, 3, 4 years look like a rundown gas station. So how do we ensure something like that?
This has been a topic of discussion between the planning department and the applicant over the last, 2 months or so. And we are generally, except for the north facade of it, the planning staff is happy with where the architecture has gotten to at this point. We think that especially the front, the east and south facades, which are going to be the two that are absolutely the most visible, those will present a good front for this business towards Highway 30. Would I like to see more architectural stuff? Always. But I think what we have on the west front is acceptable and will present a good face.
The front of the store, John, it's actually going to be facing to the east.
Yes.
Is that right? It's going to be facing Barrington, so when you turn in, you're going to be turning in to the front of the store. It makes sense. Okay.
Are there, other than what was mentioned in the report, are there other architectural elements that you said you'd like to see?
You know, I wouldn't be opposed to seeing some kind of architectural element because there's a second floor up there, something that articulates that it is a second floor. I don't know. I'm not an architect, so maybe a window, maybe a canopy. Again, I'm not in that, but it's, yeah.
Okay. I got a couple. I think I can.
Well, I guess to go back to Brian's comment, for the record, in terms of harmony and accord with the land development code, I wouldn't expect the staff to recommend a particular action without taking that into account. So, I mean, I take their recommendation to approve or deny something as implicitly expressing whether they think it's in accord with the land development code. Then we can always decide whether to agree, but I take that to be their position generally. And if nothing else, Ben knows that I feel that way now, so.
Yeah, and exactly. I mean that 100%. I agree. I guess I wanted it stated.
You know, I guess to boil down the case from my point of view, you know, Judy made the good point that it's not our business to decide whether we need another gas station in Oxford or where exactly it should be. And a lot of the concerns that I've read from the community are about traffic. And I take that not to be related to this particular use, since there's 80 acres of development that's going to be right behind it. So I think there's a larger concern about traffic in the area, but I'm not sure that that should guide, excuse me, guide decisions on this particular use being allowed at this site.
Yeah, and that's the second finding we have to make, at least, is to, is it adverse to the public interest? Again, we've got a traffic study. I'm not so sure who would go through Park Drive to access this store. I think most of the traffic's gonna be on Molly Bar and maybe coming off 7, but you're still gonna be on Molly Bar. The lighting has been addressed. It's within code. It's all shielded and goes downward. Noise, I mean, I can't help, and neither can the applicant help if somebody is knowing. We have certain ordinances that protect against that, but I mean, I don't think they can help the noise any more than they can help litter. You know, if you're gonna play music loud, or you're gonna throw garbage out your window, I mean, that's on you. I don't think that's on the applicant to sort of enforce. So there's really not much I can say that hadn't been addressed as to the public interest part, at least from the standpoint of what we heard from the surrounding landowners and neighborhood. I mean, that neighborhood's, a lot of traffic's going through there because you got Oxford Commons on the other side. So it's just a product of a growing town.
Yeah. Let me ask, when is Behringer going to be completed? The ingress into the gas, because that's going to have to be completed first, of course, before.
Correct. Yeah, and
what's the timeline on that?
They're working, they're moving dirt.
Yeah, I mean, the weather's got us, delayed as always, but our intent initially was this month. It's probably looking more like March, April right now. We've got to build it kind of backwards so that we don't interfere with the central office. So we'll start kind of on the interior and work our way back, and then at a time that's, convenient, we'll just kind of chop off the old entry into the school district and connect the new one, and then the school will actually have their own new entrance further on down.
Okay.
Those should be in some original plans of the overall development. You have those?
I was just kind of wondering on timeline for it. Will, let me ask you this, you may or may not know. What sort of gas station are we looking at here? What are the hours? I know there's retail and a restaurant. I mean.
Right. I can't speak to the hours. I can speak to the ownership, the operator. They run extremely nice, extremely clean, well-run operations. Whether they stay open until 10 or 12, I really don't know. I think that's probably a location-by-location decision. I don't know. If I had to guess, I would say 10 or 12 o'clock at night is when closing time would be. But
okay,
a lot of these stations now they close the inside, but they leave their pumps on. So yeah, they may want to do that. I'm not really sure.
And then retail. What sort of? Because there's a retail. Correct me if I'm wrong. There's a retail space and a restaurant space. Is that?
There's only one. There's only one additional space. There's the C-store and then one additional space. And as to the use at this time, I don't know. It was retail. Retail was all they told me. They had a couple ideas, but they didn't allude to exactly what we just know that it wouldn't be a QSR. That was the only thing that we did talk to them about because of traffic, for traffic reasons, because that generates more than.
All right. So, and that's kind of a follow or leading into my next question. Liquor store. It's a liquor store, one of these retail establishments, over there. And then, and Paul Watkins, you with me? I got a question. I know they're selling beer, and really there's not a difference when you're looking at beer and liquor. I trust we've already looked and that this isn't within whatever the distance is to the school building, right?
No, it's not. So we actually did look at this.
Okay.
Because this was one of the concerns again, and that was my next point, I guess, to get to, was sale of alcohol and tobacco. The city ordinance calls for 100 feet between building lines from a school, not the school property, but that's also predicated on that it's on the same side of the street. In this case, Barrington Drive separates the school from the C-store site, so we wouldn't be.
So that's the local ordinance. What's the state ordinance, Paul?
I think our local ordinance here.
I think it's either similar or the same, but I think it does still fall on the same side of the road. That's what I had in the back of my head now, is that if you're across the street, then it's not.
So would there be an issue, let's just say where that parking lot is in front of OE right now, and let's just say down the road, the school district wanted to build some more classrooms right there. Are we gonna run into anything because it would be closer to a gas station that sells alcohol and tobacco?
I think it's if I'm understanding, I have the layout right behind, it's always gonna be across the street, because that new street cuts between the current school district property and where the gas station's gonna allow the new little ingress, egress.
Yeah.
So I don't, you
So
might
that,
build
okay.
something closer to the highway that's a little closer to that, but I don't think it's ever gonna be on the same side of the road.
Well, I know it's not gonna be on the same side of the road, but so you're saying the street that bisects the two properties, at that point, nothing else really matters, regardless of how close the educational facility is to the gas station, liquor store, or whatever? Okay,
Downtown, churches have the same restriction. Generally, once you hit the end of that, whichever square block it is, it's not on the same side of the street.
okay, okay.
I mean, the way it's written, you basically have to be immediately next.
Biggest thing, though, is it's not going to prohibit the school district from possibly expanding, if they wanted to that part of their property.
And Duncan, I've always taken the position that if somebody builds something that it would not be allowed to build if a neighboring property was developed differently, and then the neighboring property makes the decision to build something that had it existed at the time the adjacent property developed, the adjacent property wouldn't have been able to do that. That doesn't mean that the school property or church property shuts the service station down if it comes closer. It just means that it's making the decision to build within whatever that radius is.
Okay, well, I was just making sure that they still had the ability, though, to make that decision, and it wouldn't interfere with, okay.
There's no
Yeah.
prohibition on building
Yeah.
church or school close.
Yeah.
Some place that sells alcohol,
It's only by, okay, yeah,
We've had that issue come up with, there was a former church building, or building that had been previously used for a church. I can't remember where it was or exactly when this was. And somebody wanted to come and develop, so they did look at the same kind of issue. What, if this was a building that was once used for a church, does that mean that the property next door is forever prohibited from developing into a restaurant that has bar service or something like that? And the answer's gotta be no. It's looking at what exists at the time this new use is coming in. Are they or are they not able to put that in? If the answer is yes, then it's just in. And whoever the new neighbors are in the future just have to make their decisions about where they want to locate.
okay, all right.
All right. Any additional questions? Hearing none. Any questions? No, we've checked in the gallery. We have no one appearing who wishes to voice an objection. We understand and have the objections to this special exception, which were sent via email. Those are contained within the file, within the case. Having no one here especially appearing live or virtually to voice an objection, and hearing no questions, additional questions from the commissioners, I'll entertain a motion as to the special exception request in case number 2694.
Motion to approve the special exception subject to staff conditions.
I have a motion to approve subject staff conditions. Commissioner Gray, do you have a second?
Can I offer up a possible condition? And you can tell me if you want to take it or not. So, and Paul may need your help with this one as well, and how the language. I'm glad to hear that we got dialogue going about the roundabout, and I want to make sure that we're making substantial progress to completion of that. And not waiting until a massive amount of development occurs to then start the process. Y'all help me with that.
Would the development, a certain amount of development trigger it regardless of this station?
Yes,
Yeah,
but I want to get on.
The study's gonna call for improvement at whatever point it does. I mean, at some point, they're gonna come to some new phase of this, and they're gonna say, see prior traffic study that said, here's the options, one of those is gonna have to be triggered. But it might not be the next phase of development, it might not be the next building they come with,
Well, and I get that, I want to make sure the progress that Will's making, we sustain that progress, and continue that progress. So, I don't know. Does that make sense?
I hear what you're saying, though.
Yeah.
I'm having difficulty articulating a way that makes that any kind of meaningful condition on the approval of this. Hey, make the assumption, and I'm sure this is gonna happen, so no offense, Will, but what if the service station is the last thing that's ever developed out there, and the development goes under the next day, and it just reverts back to being 80 some odd acres?
So that's why I called on you, because I couldn't make it either. So, Will, what were you going to say?
I don't know, you killed me there. No, I was going to say that this is not going to be the first application that an applicant's going to have. There's other uses substantially different, but probably just as impactful, that are going to be coming on board. Maybe not initially, but the commitments are there, and some of these uses, just because of the sheer number of employees and people that are coming in every day, it's going to have substantially more of an impact than a C-store is going to have.
Oh, yeah.
And
yeah,
so
yeah.
it is our priority to address this as soon as possible. It's just a big job. And so for me to be able to give you, like, take the school entrance, for example. I mean, we tried to hit January, and we're still playing in the mud out there. So, it's our priority to try to get it done as soon as possible. There's just a lot of moving parts.
I can live with that. If you can sit up here and say, it is our priority, we're working on it, we are going to get this done sooner rather than later, and not wait until whoever's going to build out over here starts to argue over who has to pay for the round, you know what I'm saying? So
right.
I'm okay with that. So I withdraw my
Almost amendment.
almost amendment, and so nothing, that's right. Gosh, all right, so I'll second it.
All right, we got a motion, subject to approve, subject to staff conditions in a second. Commissioner Freeman, how do you vote?
I vote no.
Commissioner King, how do you vote?
I vote yes.
Commissioner Riddell?
Yes.
Commissioner Murphy?
Yes.
Did you get that?
Yes. And then y'all are.
And here?
Yes. Joseph Murphy, yes, sorry.
Thank you, Joseph. All right. The special exception is approved. All right, John, I promise this will be quicker with this one. It's a public hearing for case number 2695. It's RAN Management. It's a request for site plan approval for the same property located at Mississippi Highway 30.
Okay, same property. So it's going to be about 11,000 square feet on about a 7,050 foot footprint. So about 4,000 square feet for a second story. And that, okay, so use requirements, we kind of did most of that first paragraph. The parking standard for this use is 1 parking space for each 300 square feet of gross sales floor area. In this instance, the applicant has provided 23 spaces, including 2 handicap accessible spaces, which meets parking requirements for the ground floor. As the second floor will be used exclusively for storage, no parking spaces are required for that area, as parking for service stations is calculated off a patron area. But if any other use were to occupy that space in the future, additional parking may be required. For coverage and height requirements, T&B zoning allows for up to 80% impervious lot coverage. The proposed development would comply with 73% impervious coverage. T&B zoning also requires a functional second story of at least 51% of the square footage of the ground floor. This proposal includes a second story of 57% of the first floor. For other requirements, for the building facade and materials, the current plans call for brick and stone veneer with bronze metal canopies. For signage, the site plan approval does not include approval of signage, and a separate approval will be required to ensure compliance with the sign requirements of Land Development Code. For lighting, a photometric study has been provided with a submission that shows minor spillover light to the west property line. Staff recommends a condition that requires an updated lighting plan to maintain site lighting on site. For access, the primary access will be from future Barrington Drive. Brianna will have more comments about that in her section. Sidewalks are indicated on site that will connect the retail building to the existing sidewalk network. For landscaping and tree requirements, there were no significant or heritage trees on site that required mitigation. The proposed landscape design meets all standards related to parking lot trees and landscaping requirements. Highlights from engineering. Rihanna kind of, in the last case, gave a pretty good summary of what the traffic study indicated on that. There seems to be some stuff that needs to be worked out still with MDOT. And engineering has some conditions related to both the traffic study and working with MDOT. Water and sewer seem to be good, as are street lighting. Street lighting is not observed on the construction plans, but it's going to be required along Barrington in accordance with city standards. And stormwater management is going to be, it was already previously approved, I guess, with the preliminary plat. All of the departments have reviewed the site plan and have recommended approval. So our recommendation, staff recommends approval of the site plan for the C-Store Colonnade Crossing with the following conditions. Approval is for the site plan as submitted. Approval is contingent on the approval of a special exception for the use of a service station in T&B district. Approval by the Mayor and Board of Aldermen of a final plat is required prior to the issuance of any building permits. An updated photometric lighting plan must be submitted prior to the issuance of any building permits. An update from the Mississippi Department of Transportation is required for the access of Barrington to Highway 30. Staff has the authority to approve changes to the construction plans regarding infrastructure, including the roadway alignment and layout. Approval is contingent on completion of any recommendations made in the traffic study for the gas station. Approval is contingent on receipt of a feasible layout for a roundabout at the intersection of Highway 30 Park Barrington. Approval is contingent on the addition of streetlights along Barrington as required.
Any questions virtually as to the site plan? Any questions? I assume the last case, just while we're here, the last case would remove condition 2.
Yes.
So with that condition removed, any questions from live members? You want me to keep it in?
I keep the condition because the special exception had conditions tied up in it, and maintenance of those conditions should be applied to the site plan.
Fair enough. You're my legal counsel. I will always take advice of legal counsel. We will keep it in. All right, so is there anyone here virtually or live who wishes to object to the request for site plan approval as to case number 2695? All right, virtually? Hearing none, I'll entertain a motion as to case number 2695, approval of the site plan for the Phase 1 C-Store Colony Crossing.
Motion to approve the site plan, subject to staff conditions.
I have a motion to approve subject to all staff conditions. Is there a second?
Second.
I'm going to give it to virtual. Who was that? Bill, Marvin?
Joseph Murphy.
Okay, Joseph Murphy, give me, he got the second. All right, all in favor, excuse me, Commissioner Freeman, how do you vote?
Yes.
Commissioner King?
Yes.
Commissioner Riddell?
Yes.
Commissioner Murphy?
Yes.
And here. All right, it is approved. Will, John, thank you for your time. Public hearing case number 2707, it's CB Holdings LLC. It's a special exception request as to 2.6.7 TMB neighborhood business for attached residential units property located at Grand Oaks, in the Grand Oaks PUD. Ben.
Thank you. This is a 12-acre piece of property. It's located in the southeast corner at the intersection of Clubhouse Drive and OUS Drive. This property is its own traditional neighborhood business. The applicant is requesting the ability to build detached single-family homes on fee simple lots. The property is not included in the Grand Oaks planned unit development. It's important to note that in 2009, this property was rezoned from industrial to neighborhood business. The application actually states that the current property owner acquired the property in 2016. And during that time, I've actually met with the developer on many occasions, or several occasions, to consider development proposals on how this could be, could actually be constructed with commercial property. So we've looked at multiple iterations, and they've had difficulties marketing that. The application also does note that the outbreak of COVID-19 has created a new challenge that they are experiencing with developing interest for this site as commercial or mixed use. Since the property was rezoned in 2009, the surrounding property has been developed with different phases of the grove at Grand Oaks. And those properties, those lots measure anywhere from half an acre in size to well over an acre. The applicant is requesting a special exception to allow for single-family residential subdivision to be constructed at the site. The property in the application packet is, the applicant did provide a conceptual plan for what's indicated there is 42 lots for this property. The concept plan does include stormwater detention, a park, and a green space that would be located near the intersection of Clubhouse Drive and OUS Drive should this should this request be approved. They would be required to go through a formal subdivision plat, which also requires a plan to be submitted to the Site Plan Review Committee for consideration. And at that time, modifications to that conceptual site plan may result of this review. As the area is currently developed, the industrial and commercial businesses are limited to the west of Clubhouse and OUS Drive, and this property is the only commercially zoned property east of that intersection. It would be ideal to have a mixed-use development located at this site, and staff does appreciate the developer's attempts to create that style of a development. Since the subject property is surrounded by already developed residential, staff does believe that it makes sense for this property to be developed as a residential neighborhood. And it does seem that this proposal will be compatible with the existing neighborhood, and it doesn't adversely affect. The lots are fairly comparable in size. Staff recommends approval of the special exception with the following conditions. And I do want to mention one other thing before I get to the conditions. When you look at the letters that have been provided by the applicant from residents in the surrounding area, there is a reference to R1 residential, which was a previous zoning district that we had. We had R1 and R1A, and we combined that to suburban residential. Both of those districts basically came out to suburban residential. And so I'd like to add a condition that that the development proposal for this property, if it's approved, would be consistent with the suburban residential standards. I think lot size, density, setbacks also, I think, are appropriate, so that way it would allow for a little variation in the build to line in the rear yard, since it would be residential. And with that, the other two conditions would be approvals for single-family residential development as indicated in the submitted conceptual plan. The plan is subject to change based on the review from the Site Plan Review Committee in order to comply with the requirements of the Land Development Code. And the special exception shall expire within 18 months if no building permits have been issued.
Thank you, Ben.
You bet. I know Larry Britt is on the call, but Margaret is here in person. So if you have any specific questions, she'd be able to answer them as well.
Ben, can I ask a question?
Sure.
Regarding the zoning standards that you just mentioned, was it your wish to have the suburban residential listed as a condition? Did it meet those standards?
Yes, please.
Okay.
Thank you.
Any questions virtually? All right, I assume we've all... Hey, Joseph?
There's a bit of a delay, and I'm sorry about that. Anyway, down here at the bottom on the application, there's a request that talks about the special exception that but the rear yard setback be changed from 50 to 25 feet.
So,
But in the, go ahead.
well, in the traditional neighborhood business district, there was it was actually 25 feet unless you were adjacent to ER or SR residential, but by having the suburban residential standards be required for this residential development, then it will help us. Actually, what they would have is, I think, 20 feet for the rear yard, consistent with the other style of development that's over there. So in a way,
Perfect.
Joseph, we would be granting that request.
Okay, but you're saying they don't really need it, correct?
Correct.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Any additional questions virtually? How about here? You're getting off easy. Anyone here tonight who is here to object or wishes to ask questions in regards to 2707, the request for special exception by CB Holdings? Hearing none, I'll entertain a motion as to case number 2707, the request for the special exception.
Motion to grant the special exception subject to the listed conditions and an additional condition that the subdivision meet the requirements for suburban residential.
I have a motion to approve the special exception with the conditions cited within the planning report, as well as the added condition stated tonight regarding suburban residential and meeting those standards. Is there a second?
I'll second.
There is a second. Commissioner Freeman, how do you vote?
Yes.
Commissioner King?
Yes.
Commissioner Riddell?
Yes.
Commissioner Murphy?
Yes.
All in favor here? It is approved. Mr. Britt, thank you for your appearance.
Thank you very much.
Yes, sir. This brings us to Oxford School District. It's case number 2707. It's a site plan approval for the Oxford School District Career and Technical Education Building.
Mr. Chairman, I'm accusing myself of this one.
You, as you well should. Thank you. Paul, let the record show that we're without legal counsel. Paul has recused himself, as well as Commissioner Gray, due to their tie-ins to the school district. Gray, your floor.
Thank you. This request is for a site plan approval to construct a career and technical education building on the Oxford High School campus. The building will be located between the existing Fine Arts building and gymnasium. The proposed building will be an approximately 13,000 square foot single-story building that will provide classroom space, a computer lab, storage, and large workspaces for electrical, mechanical, and carpentry subjects. The building will be accessed through existing private roads that are connected to Charger Loop and Sisk Avenue. Future plans include the addition of an auto body shop to the east of this proposed building. The city intends to utilize existing parking on site for the building. 3 of the existing parking spaces will be restriped as 2 ADA van accessible spaces. It highlights from the review elements. Architecturally, it'll be a brick building, and rooftop mounted equipment will be screened. They've included additional landscaping around the building and a formal entry, and related to pathways into the building. A sidewalk from the building will connect pedestrians to the parking lot to the south. An accessible route has been provided between the existing buildings and the proposed CTE building. A newly proposed ramp leading the CTE building will be tied into an accessible route that connects to an existing crosswalk, which is adjacent to the van accessible parking spaces. The applicant's engineer updated the site plan today, showing the call out for the sidewalk and ADA accessible pedestrian ramp. And you can find those on page 8 and 9 of your packet. Staff recommends approval of the site plan with the 3 conditions stated in the report.
Thank you. Any questions from the virtual commission? Any questions from you, JR? All right. Anyone here tonight who wishes to object to the plans for Oxford School District to place their career and tech education building? Hearing none, I'll entertain a motion to approve, I'll entertain a motion in regards to 2708.
Motion to approve the site plan, subject to staff conditions.
There is a motion to approve site plan subject to staff conditions. Commissioner Gray has recused himself, so does anyone virtually, how about you? Commissioner King, do you have a second of any motion?
Yes, I'd like to second the motion.
All right, thank you. We have a motion and a second. Commissioner Freeman, how do you vote?
Yes.
Commissioner King, how do you vote?
Yes.
Commissioner Riddell?
Yes.
Commissioner Murphy?
Yes.
Here live. And thank you, Gray. It is approved. Before we begin, we'll allow the others to come back. I'll go ahead and call the case. It's 2709. It's a request. Final plat approval as amended for Woodland Hills subdivision lots 22, 23, and 24. It's filed by the applicants Betsy Patton and Louisa Dixon. Properties are located at 301 and 311 Longest Road. Yes, Greg.
Thanks, Brian. This report pertains to a request to amend lot lines on 2 adjoining lots of a final plat originally approved in 1953. The subject properties are located in the Woodland Hills subdivision along the north side of Longest Road and west side of Eagle Springs Road. 2 single-family homes exist on these lots. The purpose of this request is to amend the subdivision plat to modify lot lines between lots 22, 23, and 24. The amendment will confirm that Betsy Patton legally owns Lot 24 and the eastern half of Lot 23, while Louisa Dixon legally owns Lot 22 and western half of Lot 23. The amendment will dissolve Lot 23, and new Lot 22 will measure approximately 0.64 of an acre, and new Lot 24 will measure approximately 0.644 of an acre as well. The lot size minimum in the traditional estate residential zoning district is 15,000 square feet, and both of these modified lots far exceed that. Attached in the report are letters of approval from other owners in the subdivision that the applicant has deemed potentially adversely affected or directly interested. Those were all, approved recommendation of the amendment, and staff has not received any questions or complaints regarding this request.
Go ahead, I'm sorry.
Staff recommends approval of the plat amendment with the 2 conditions stated in your report.
Any discussion from the commission? All right.
I have one question.
Commissioner Freeman.
Yes, is it typical for us to confirm ownership through a plat? I'm just looking at the wording here under the planning comments that this amendment will confirm who owns which lot.
Well, it may be worded a little awkwardly, Bill.
That looks odd. Bill, it may be worded a little awkwardly. What it's doing is allowing the subdivision plat proper to reflect the actual ownership of the property. I mean, as I understand it, that lot has been split at some point and conveyed to those 2 separate property owners. So this is recognizing that conveyance in terms of the subdivision plat.
All right. Any additional questions? Hearing none. Any questions here, you guys? Hearing none, I'll entertain a motion as to case number 2709 with staff conditions. Oh, if you want to make it so.
I'll make the motion.
All right, I got a motion to approve with staff conditions. Is there a second?
Second.
There is a motion and a second. Commissioner King, how do you vote?
Yes.
Commissioner Freeman?
Yes.
Commissioner Riddell?
Yes.
Commissioner Murphy?
Yes.
All live here? Thank you. It is approved. Thank you all very much. Enjoy your enlarged lots. Last but not least is 2701. It's a site plan approval. It's a site plan approval for, it's case number 2710, actually. It's site plan approval filed by JWN Rentals for Old Trail Condominiums located at 50 County Road 401.
Yes, sir. Subject property, as you said, located on the west side of County Road 401, south of the intersection of Highway 7 South and County Road 401, and southeast of Oxford Commerce Park. The property measures approximately 1.71 acres and is bound on the west side by a drainage channel that drains south to Bernie Branch Creek. The applicant is requesting site plan approval for Old Trail Condominiums, a proposal of 15 dwelling units that will be owned through a common interest development mechanism. The development proposes a mix of units, including 5 single-story duplexes and 5 single-story detached structures. All of the units will be 1-bedroom units. The units will have vehicular access out to County Road 401 from 2 points of ingress-egress at the north and south of the property. These access points off County Road 401 create a loop road around the development. The structures will be brick, As I stated, the common interest development mechanism is being used. The applicant's engineer is aware that covenants are required, and we've got that as a condition of approval. I'm going to come back to complete streets in the engineering department, but there's a condition about a dedicated bike lane or subgrade infrastructure for a bike lane. The proposed landscape design meets standards related to parking lot, edge, foundation planning, and frontage tree requirements. No mitigation is required. The drainage channel along the length of the western side of the property is designated as a blue line stream, and a buffer has been provided with evergreen cedars around that entire length of the property line. The stormwater detention pond is partially within this buffer, but is considered a utility and is allowed per section 5.7.6.2 in buffers. Impervious coverage requirement is met. Land development code for this development requires 23 parking spaces and 20 are provided. The applicant requested a waiver of parking required by 14% due to the drainage channel along the west side of the property in an effort to minimize damage to the existing stream ecosystem. This drainage channel is designated as a blue line stream, as I've stated. The planning director can allow a parking reduction waiver of up to 25%. With this proposal being a total of 15 one-bedroom units and the consideration to the stream buffer, planning staff finds the 20 spaces provided to be adequate for this development. Going back to the bike lane and the engineering, summarizing the engineering comments, a bike lane is not currently shown in the plans, but the subgrade for a 5-foot bike lane will be required to be constructed in accordance with the city's complete streets policy and as recommended by the Pathways Commission. Staff is not requiring the approximate 425-foot section of new bike lane to be paved. Therefore, there will be no bike vehicular transition until such time as an appropriate transition can be provided. Staff is requesting that an appropriate subgrade be constructed flush with the pavement edge. This will provide a safe shoulder until an asphalt surface can be placed at sometime in the future when there is additional length of bike lane available. Staff recommends approval of the site plan for Old Trail Condominiums with the 5 conditions stated in your report.
Thank you, Greg. Mr. Granberry's here as well for this one, and he can answer any questions if there are any. You may not get any, John, I don't know. Virtually any questions for the applicant or the applicant's representative or staff? How about you guys? See, save you some time, John. All right, hearing no questions, anyone here or virtually wish to object, I think the only thing anybody left is part of the planning department. Actually, I see one guest. Anyone here wish to object? Hearing none, I'll entertain a motion as to case number 2710.
Motion to approve the site plan subject to staff conditions.
There's a motion to approve the site plan subject to staff conditions. Is there a second?
Second.
There's a second. All right, Commissioner Riddell, how do you vote?
Yes.
Commissioner Freeman?
Yes.
Commissioner Murphy?
Yes.
Commissioner King?
Yes.
Here live. It is approved. Safe travels back to Memphis, John. Take care. That seems to conclude our agenda. Is there any announcements from the planning department? Anything we need to discuss before leaving this fine evening? Hearing none, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
There's a motion to adjourn. Is there a second?
Second.
All right, Commissioner Riddell?
Yes.
Commissioner King?
Yes.
Commissioner Freeman?
Yes, sir.
Commissioner Murphy?
Yes, sir.
All right, here. All right, all in favor. It is approved. Thank you for your attendance. See y'all next month.